Grace stood in front of the glass entrance of Brilliant Minds High School, watching students glide through the courtyard like they were walking on a movie set. Laughter echoed in the air, crisp and polished. You could almost smell the money in the air. Perfumes from Paris, designer bags, shiny watches that sparkled when the sun hit them just right. She clutched the strap of her plain black bag tighter. This was her new beginning. New school, new city, new people. Inside, the hallway looked like a mini shopping mall, with white tiles, air conditioning, and walls covered with art pieces and motivational quotes in gold frames. No school uniforms here. Everyone wore high-end clothes. One girl was in a silk dress with heels too high for school. Another had a mini designer bag no bigger than her palm. Grace walked through quietly. She wore a polka-dot trousers and a tucked-in white shirt, though simple, was spotless. Her hair was braided neatly, and her face, soft, calm, and beautiful, held no expression. But what caught everyone's attention was her body. Grace was visibly muscular. Her arms were toned, her shoulders broad, and she walked with quiet confidence. Not the flashy kind the other girls practiced in the mirror, but the kind that came from years of discipline. She didn't need to swing her hips or flip her hair. She just walked, and still, eyes followed her. Some students leaned into their circles and whispered, "Is she one of the new gym trainers?" "No, look, she's got a backpack. She's a student." "She's pretty, but she looks like she is from a village." "Why is she walking like a soldier? I didn't even know a girl could look like that." Grace heard it all, but her face didn't change. She kept her eyes forward. She wasn't surprised by their comments. It had always been this way. Wherever she went, people stared, talked, pointed. That's why she loved staying indoors. That's where the silence felt honest. That's where nobody judged her body like it was a show. She knew she didn't belong in their world, not the way they dressed, talked, or moved. Her mother was a single parent, strong, successful, and deeply loving, a well-to-do lawyer who had worked hard to build a good life for them. But this school, this elite, glamorous world, it had taken years of saving to afford just 1 year here. Her final year. And Grace was not about to waste it. She had promised herself that much. She was used to the whispers, used to the stares. Yes, they hurt every time. But she had learned not to let them reach her heart. Just last month, she had moved to Makuta with her mother. Grace's new school, Brilliant Minds High, wasn't where she thought she'd end up. It was known for housing the children of celebrities, politicians, and billionaires. Here, students talked about summer in the Maldives, shopping in Milan, and how their parents were planning to send them to the US or Canada for university. Some were already going for weekend classes in French, Mandarin, and even golf. Grace didn't care about any of that. All she wanted was peace. She found her class, SS3, a science track, and stepped in. The room was spacious with leather chairs, glass desks, and tablet screens built into every seat. Heads turned. The silence that followed wasn't loud, but it was heavy. A tall girl near the center, dressed in a green Versace blouse and sharp eyeliner, raised one brow slightly and leaned back like she was watching a performance. Grace ignored her and walked to the corner of the class by the window. She pulled out her notebook and placed it on the table. When the teacher walked in and started roll call, she listened quietly. "Grace Williams?" She raised her hand. "Present, sir." Her voice was soft, clear, and controlled. After that, she said nothing else for the rest of the period. No small talk, no smiles, just calm presence. No one in that room knew who she really was. And Grace wanted to keep it that way. The tall girl with the Versace blouse is Cynthia, the most popular student in school. She's used to being the center of attention. But something about Grace unsettles her, and the queen of the school doesn't like feeling small. Cynthia watched Grace from across the class like someone watching a quiet flame in a dark room. Small, still, but too steady to ignore. She sat tall in her chair, her green Versace blouse perfectly ironed, gold necklace resting lightly against her collarbone. Her long lashes blinked slowly as she leaned toward her best friend, Lola. "Did you see the arms on that girl?" Cynthia whispered, not hiding the edge in her voice. Lola smirked. "She looks like she should be in a bricklayer, not a student." They both laughed, but Cynthia's eyes stayed on Grace. There was something about her, something that didn't move, didn't shift, didn't react. It bothered Cynthia more than she could explain. She was used to being the main character. Everywhere she went, eyes followed her. Teachers treated her like royalty. Students begged to sit beside her. Her pictures got hundreds of likes within minutes. She didn't just rule Brilliant Minds High. She owned it. Her parents were billionaires. Her mother ran one of the biggest fashion companies in the country. Her father was into oil and real estate. Everything Cynthia touched looked expensive. Every step she took was calculated. She had been raised to expect the world to bow when she walked past. But Grace didn't bow. She didn't look. She didn't greet. She didn't even glance in Cynthia's direction. That silence felt like rejection, and Cynthia didn't like rejection. "Who does she think she is?" she muttered. Lola looked back at Grace. "She's not even trying to dress like she belongs here. Just because she looks like an elephant doesn't make her special." "Not at all," Cynthia replied coldly. Mimi, who had been quiet, leaned in and whispered, "I heard she's new to the city. Her mum's a lawyer or something. Single parent. No big name." Cynthia's eyes narrowed. Well, nothing ever gets past you, Lola, so she's basically here on pity." Mimi shrugged. "Maybe scholarship." Cynthia leaned back and smiled slowly. Not a warm smile, a calculating one. She had already decided. This girl, this Grace Williams, needed to be put in her place. It wasn't just the way she looked. It wasn't just the silence. It was the fact that, without trying, she had managed to draw every eye in the class, even Daniel's. Cynthia turned to Daniel, her boyfriend, who sat just 2 rows away. Tall, athletic, dark-skinned, always smelling like fresh cologne. Captain of the basketball team, the face of every school campaign, he looked like he belonged in a magazine. "Did you see the new girl?" Cynthia asked, already knowing the answer. Daniel didn't even try to pretend. "Yeah, she's different." Cynthia's smile dropped slightly. "Different how?" Daniel shrugged, trying not to sound too interested. "She just has this presence." "Presence," Cynthia repeated, her voice sharper now. Daniel quickly added, "I mean, you're still the one running this place, you know that." Cynthia smiled again, but it didn't reach her eyes. She looked over at Grace, still sitting quietly in her corner, flipping a page in her notebook, untouched by the chaos she had just created without knowing. "She'll learn," Cynthia said softly, almost to herself. Lola grinned. "Are we going to make it fun?" Cynthia nodded. "Very fun." That was how it always started, with a smile that meant something else, with whispers that grew louder over days. Cynthia didn't scream. She didn't fight. She used charm, fear, and control. And now, she had picked her next target. Grace Williams. It started small. A whisper here, a loud laugh there, a question that sounded like a joke but wasn't funny at all. Grace would be walking down the hallway when Cynthia's voice would suddenly cut through the air like a blade wrapped in silk. "Blink twice if you need help carrying that grocery bag you call arms," she'd say, nodding at Grace's muscular arms. The hallway would erupt in laughter. Grace didn't flinch. She didn't even glance her way. The next day, Grace was standing by her locker when Lola passed by with her usual loud energy and sneered, "You sure you're not here to fix the school generator? With those arms?" Mimi followed close behind, pretending to be confused. "Wait, I thought she was a new security officer. Are you sure she's a student?" More laughter. Grace closed her locker slowly and walked away, calm as ever. Every day, it got louder. In the cafeteria, Cynthia would raise her voice just enough to carry across the room. "Should we clear the table before Grace sits? Don't want it collapsing under all that muscle." At the library, she'd lean against a shelf and say, "Be careful, Grace. Those bookshelves weren't made to survive weightlifting." Sometimes Lola would fake a grunt as Grace walked past, pretending to struggle under an invisible load. "Oof, I think I just pulled a muscle looking at her biceps." And Mimi, always the quiet one, would smile sweetly and whisper, "Maybe she sleeps on barbells instead of pillows." Grace heard every word, but she never responded. Not with her mouth, not with her face, not even with her eyes. She kept walking, head high, back straight, silent. Her silence was her armor. But to Cynthia, that silence felt like disrespect. Every insult Cynthia threw was designed to get a reaction, a flinch, a frown, a breakdown, something, anything. But Grace gave her nothing. And the more Grace ignored her, the more Cynthia burned. She's acting like she's above me. How dare she ignore me? Cynthia hissed one afternoon, her fingers tightening around her phone. Lola rolled her eyes. Then take her down already. Mimi, always watching, always listening, leaned in and said, maybe she's scared of what you will do to her if she talks. Cynthia shook her head. She doesn't look scared. More like she's mocking me. She stared at Grace across the school courtyard, sitting under the big mango tree with a book in her hand, her legs stretched out, her face peaceful, like she didn't have a single worry in the world. That peace made Cynthia feel invisible. She thinks she's better than us, because she is built like that, Cynthia snapped. She's making you look weak, Lola added. Cynthia's lips pressed into a thin line. Then she smiled, but it was sharp, not soft. She turned to Mimi and said quietly, let's see how long she stays silent when the whole school is watching. The cafeteria at Brilliant Minds High was more like a luxury lounge than a school lunchroom. Round marble tables, soft music playing in the background, and students chatting like they were at a garden party. Grace sat alone near the glass window, quietly eating her lunch. A simple plate of rice and grilled chicken, a bottle of water beside it. She never spoke unless spoken to. She didn't scroll through her phone like the others. She didn't try to join any group. She just ate, calm, focused. But her silence? It was too loud for Cynthia to ignore. The moment Cynthia walked into the cafeteria, the energy shifted. People looked up, eyes following her long legs, her designer dress, the soft click of her heels. Daniel walked a few steps behind her, phone in hand. Lola and Mimi flanked her sides like bodyguards. As they passed Grace's table, Cynthia slowed down. Then with perfect timing, she turned sharply, and a full cup of red juice slipped from her hand. The splash was instant. The cold juice spilled across Grace's plate. Gasps filled the air. Cynthia covered her mouth with mock surprise. "Oh no," she said, voice sweet like syrup. Laughter burst from her table. Some students chuckled nervously. Others watched with wide eyes. Lola nearly bent over laughing. "Did you see her face?" But Grace didn't move. Not at first. She took a napkin from the table, wiped the seat carefully, then wiped her hands. Still no words, still no expression. She turned to walk away, but Cynthia wasn't done. She shifted slightly and stuck her leg out just enough. Grace stumbled. There was a sudden pause in the room. But then, just before she could fall, Grace caught her balance, steadied her foot, and straightened her back. She walked out quietly, her shoes wet, her tray still in her hand. No anger, no glare, no shame, just calm. Daniel, watching from behind, blinked in disbelief. He leaned toward Lola and whispered, "She didn't even blink." Now the laughter had died down. The energy had changed. Students looked at one another, some confused, some impressed. She didn't react? Not even a word. Is she for real? The silence Grace left behind was louder than any scream could have been. Cynthia's smile faded just a little. That wasn't the reaction she had planned. She turned her head, and that was when she saw him. Justin, tall, broad, always carrying paint stains on his fingers. He walked in with his usual loud voice, a backpack slung over one shoulder, laughing at something someone said in the hallway. Justin was known in the art class for being big, aggressive, and always ready to fight someone just to show off. He also had a very obvious, very desperate crush on Cynthia, but she never saw him, never looked at him, never spoke to him, unless she needed something. And today, she needed something. Her lips curved slowly into a new smile, a dangerous one. She turned to Mimi and whispered, "Maybe it's time Grace learned a proper lesson." That evening, the city was calm. Grace sat by the window of their apartment, her dinner untouched on the table. Outside, the streetlights glowed softly. Cars passed. Horns blared in the distance. But inside, it was peaceful. Her mother noticed. "You didn't eat much," she said gently, taking off her heels and rubbing her tired feet. Grace didn't speak at first. She just sat there, staring at a crack on the floor tile. Then, after a long silence, she looked up.
"Mom, I haven't seen Grandpa since I came back from school. I need to talk to him." Her mother's eyes softened immediately. She knew that tone. She nodded, brushing Grace's hair back gently. "He's in the backyard." Grace slipped on her slippers and stepped into the small backyard, where her grandfather sat on a wooden chair, sipping warm tea under the stars. He looked up and smiled. "Ah, my lioness has come to visit." Grace smiled weakly and sat beside him. For a moment, they just listened to the night, the hum of insects, the cool breeze. Then she said it, slowly, quietly. "They won't stop staring, laughing, whispering, every day." Her grandfather's face didn't change. He nodded slowly. "I know that look," he said. "That tired look. I've worn it too." He leaned back in his chair, hands behind his head. Her grandfather was no ordinary man. Once a national champion in martial arts, he had won medals, trophies, and titles. They used to call him names like Knockout Master, The Beast, Steel Fist. Posters of him hung in gyms even years after he retired. But to Grace, he was simply Grandpa, the man who taught her to breathe through pain and bow before pride. "You were 5 when I started training you," he said, his voice calm. "Do you remember the rule?" Grace nodded. "Never use your skills unless there's no other way." "Good," he said. "And why?" "Because real strength," she whispered, "is not about showing off. It's about knowing you don't have to." He smiled proudly. "That's my girl. You didn't just inherit your muscular body from me, you got my sharp wits too." She smiled weakly, but her heart remained heavy. "I remember when I broke that boy's nose," she said quietly. Her chest tightened as the memory flooded in. She had been in primary school. A boy in their compound had teased her for weeks, pushed her, threw stones. One day he went too far. He slapped her and called her a monster. She didn't even think. Her body moved on its own. A sharp move, a quick throw. His head hit the ground hard. He was rushed to the hospital. That night, Grace cried for hours. She thought she had killed someone. Her grandfather had held her tightly, whispering over and over, "You're not bad, you're just strong, and strong people must be gentle." Since that day, she had promised herself, never again, no matter how angry, no matter how pushed. And now, she was being pushed again. But the students at Brilliant Minds High didn't know any of this. To them, she was just the girl with the gym body and the quiet mouth. Some assumed she was mute. Some thought she was slow. Others believed she was a soft-hearted country girl trying to fit into a world of gold and gloss. None of them knew the truth, that inside her calm face lived a warrior, a trained one, a silent one. Grace took a deep breath and looked up at the stars. "I just want to finish school," she said. "I don't want to hurt anyone." Her grandfather placed a hand on her shoulder, warm and firm. "And you won't, because you know who you are. But remember, Grace, peace is not the same as fear. Don't let your silence be mistaken for weakness." She nodded slowly. "I won't." The next morning, Cynthia arrived earlier than usual. She didn't head straight to class. Instead, she waited near the art wing, beside the lockers that always smelled like paint and dust. She leaned against the wall, flipping through her phone, lips slightly curved in a patient smile. She was waiting for him. Justin. Big, loud, always trying too hard. He came around the corner like he owned the floor, laughing at something one of his friends had said, his paint-smeared sketchpad in one hand and a bottle of soda in the other. The moment he saw Cynthia standing there alone, he stopped talking mid-sentence. She smiled, tilted her head. "Hey, Justin." He blinked. "Me?" She walked closer, voice soft, sweet. "You've been working out, haven't you?" Justin straightened his back instantly. Yeah, a bit." "I can tell," she said, gently touching his arm. "Listen, I need a small favor." Justin stared at her like he was dreaming. She had never spoken more than 2 words to him. And now, she was smiling, touching his arm, calling him strong. He would have done anything in that moment. "Anything," he said quickly. "Just say it." Cynthia leaned in close and whispered something into his ear. By the time he walked away, he was grinning. "And Cynthia?" She smiled too, but not kindly. This time it was sharp. Later that afternoon, after science class, Grace returned to her locker. The hallway was almost empty, the afternoon light spilling in from the windows. She pulled her locker open and paused. A folded note lay just inside. She looked around. No one was watching. She picked it up, opened it, and read, "Behind the hall, after school. If you don't come, you are a scared little coward. Cynthia." Grace held the note in her hand for a long time. Then slowly, she folded it again. Her heartbeat was steady. The silence hadn't worked. She knew that now. People like Cynthia didn't stop when you ignored them. They pushed harder, got louder, until they broke you. But Grace wasn't broken, and she wasn't going to hide anymore. This time, she would answer. Not with violence, not with anger, but with presence, with truth. She zipped up her bag. Her jaw was calm, her eyes were clear. The sun was beginning to set outside, and Grace Williams was done walking away. The sky was turning gold as the school day came to an end. Behind the east wing of Brilliant Minds High, just beyond the art studio and the staff parking lot, a quiet tension was building. A crowd had gathered. Word had spread fast. Something was about to happen. Cynthia had invited the new girl for a private meeting, and everyone knew what that meant. No teachers came back here, no cameras, just old pavement, tall hedges, and reputation on the line. Cynthia stood near the middle of the clearing, arms folded across her designer crop jacket. She was smiling like a queen waiting for a performance to begin. Beside her was Justin, tall, broad, cracking his knuckles like a boxer about to enter the ring. Behind him were Z and Collins, his two shadows, loud, lazy, always laughing at things that weren't funny. They had followed Justin around since junior secondary and treated his word like gospel. Lola and Mimi stood close to Cynthia, their faces glowing with quiet anticipation. Daniel leaned against the far wall, arms crossed, watching. He hadn't said much since morning, just stood and watched. He always watched. Then, the crowd stirred. Grace had arrived. She stepped out from the corner quietly, her bag slung over one shoulder, blazer buttoned up, no expression on her face. Whispers rolled through the students like waves. She actually came. Is she crazy? They're going to destroy her. Grace walked forward slowly, then stopped a few feet away from them. Her eyes scanned the setup. Justin standing tall, fists ready. Z bouncing from foot to foot like a cartoon fighter. Collins was already laughing like the fight had started. Cynthia at the center of it all, perfectly composed. Daniel was not far behind, arms still folded. And the crowd phones out, some pretending to scroll, others ready to record. Grace paused. Her mind whispered, "You can walk away. You can report this. You can stay clean." Fighting was against the school rules. Any physical altercation could lead to expulsion. And she had promised. She had promised herself and her grandfather never to use her strength unless she had no choice. But as she stood there, that promise fought against something else. Something heavier. The truth. These weren't regular students. These were the elites. The untouchables. Cynthia's clique could humiliate someone in broad daylight and still smile in the principal's office the next morning. She had seen it before. Whispers didn't hurt people, actions did, and Cynthia was ready to act. Grace knew, if she turned her back now, they would only chase her down again, and again, and again. She couldn't run from this, not anymore. So, she stayed. She dropped her bag quietly by the wall and stood tall, arms by her side, eyes locked. Not on Cynthia, not on the crowd, but on Justin. Justin smirked. "Finally. I thought you were going to hide behind the school nurse." Z laughed loudly. "Or maybe she got confidence because she looks macho." Collins added, "No matter how tough you look, you are still just a girl, and will never stand a chance against any boy, not the weakest one, and certainly not us." Grace didn't speak. She just stood there, completely still. A calm storm. And somehow that silence, again, was louder than the noise. Daniel watched her closely. Cynthia stepped forward and said in a voice loud enough for everyone to hear, "You wanted to be noticed, right? Well, here's your moment." Still, Grace didn't answer. But inside her, something had shifted. She had stayed. And that was the first move. The air behind the school had grown heavy. The crowd. Some students had stopped recording. Others couldn't look away. And that bothered Cynthia. She stepped forward, her heels clicking like warning shots on the pavement. "So this is it?" she asked, tilting her head. "You show up and act like you're better than everyone, eh, macho girl?" Still, Grace didn't move. Cynthia's voice grew sharper. "I'll let you go, Grace. I'll let you walk away. But first," she pointed at her polished designer shoes, "get on your knees and lick it." The crowd gasped, followed by stifled laughter. "Come on," Lola called out. "Do it and save yourself the beating." "Maybe then we'll let you eat at our table next week," Mimi added, smirking. Grace's eyes stayed where they were, locked on nothing, seeing everything. Justin took a step closer, his tall frame casting a shadow over her. He cracked his knuckles and grinned. "Are you going to stand there all day? Or are you finally going to squeal?" Still, Grace didn't move. He took one more step, closer now. His voice dropped to a whisper only she could hear. "Who do you think you are?" He leaned forward slightly. Then he gave a small hand signal. That was it. Z launched forward with full force. A heavy push meant to knock her off her feet, but it didn't. With one swift motion, Grace moved, not away, not backward, but sideways, grabbing his wrist mid-lunge, shifting her weight, and using his own momentum against him. Thud. Z hit the ground flat on his back with a stunned grunt, his eyes wide, his mouth open in shock. The crowd went silent. Nobody laughed. Even Lola's jaw dropped. Grace stood back where she was, still calm, as if nothing had happened. She didn't gloat. She didn't pose. She didn't even look at Z as he scrambled back, coughing and dazed. Collins, confused and angry, rushed forward. "You think you're smart?" He swung wildly. Grace ducked smoothly, grabbed his arm, twisted it gently, and placed her hand on his shoulder, pressing down just enough. Bam! Collins hit the ground face first, groaning. The silence that followed was thick, heavy. Daniel stepped forward, alarmed. "Cynthia, that's enough." His voice wasn't loud, but it was serious. But Cynthia wasn't thinking anymore. Her pride was boiling, her control was slipping. "No!" she shouted. "She wants to be a hero? Then let her feel it." She turned to Justin, who was watching in total shock and disbelief. "Break her bones!" Cynthia yelled. "I don't care how, just teach her a lesson she'll never forget." Gasps rose from the crowd. Even Daniel looked stunned. "Cynthia, what the hell?" But Justin, angry that his friends had been beaten so easily, clenched his fists. This wasn't about helping Cynthia anymore. It was personal. He stepped forward again. But Grace was ready now. And this time, she wouldn't just defend herself. Justin's eyes were wild. He didn't wait. With a roar that came from somewhere between rage and shame, he charged forward, arms stretched, fists clenched, feet thudding heavily against the pavement. The crowd tensed, some flinched, some turned away. But Grace didn't even blink. She watched him come like she was watching a wave in slow motion. Then just as he reached her, she moved. It was quiet. One smooth step to the side. Her hand reached for his wrist, not with force but with understanding. She shifted her weight, gently guided his arm over her shoulder, and let gravity do the rest. Thud. Justin hit the ground. It was soft and controlled. He didn't cry out, he didn't groan. He just lay there, stunned, breathing hard, eyes wide, looking up at the sky. Grace stood still, calm, present. Phones lowered. Jaws dropped. Even Daniel had stepped forward now, his arms no longer crossed, eyes fixed on Grace like he was seeing her for the first time. Cynthia stared at it all, her face pale. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She wasn't used to losing control. She wasn't used to being afraid. Her breath caught in her throat. Her pride screamed louder than her reason. So she did the only thing she knew. She stepped forward and rushed at Grace from behind, fingers curled, ready to grab or scratch or just do something to take back the moment. But before she could even touch her, Grace turned. She didn't throw her. She didn't hurt her. She simply caught Cynthia's wrist mid-motion and held it gently in the air, stopping her in place. Then Grace leaned in, her voice soft, so soft only Cynthia could hear. You don't win by making others afraid. You win by staying true to yourself. Cynthia froze. The grip around her heart was stronger than the one on her wrist. Grace released her. She didn't push. She didn't scold. She simply stepped back. And the Queen of Makuta High took a step backward too. In the silence that followed, nothing felt the same. Not the crowd, not the power, not Cynthia. The next morning, the sun rose as usual. The hallways filled as usual, but nothing felt the same. Grace walked through the school like always. No loud steps, no flashy clothes, just herself. Neat, present, and silent. But now, students noticed her differently. Not with mockery, with respect. Some nodded as she passed. A few offered quiet smiles. One girl from junior class stopped her by the stairs and said softly, "Thank you." A boy from literature class apologized shyly. "I used to laugh. I didn't know. I'm sorry." Grace didn't smile. She didn't glow. She just nodded politely and kept walking. She didn't want fans. She didn't want followers. She just wanted peace. And now, for the first time, the school gave it to her. As she entered her classroom, heads didn't turn to laugh. They turned because they wanted to learn how to be like her. Strong without needing to shout. Powerful without needing to hurt. Meanwhile, Cynthia walked into the hallway. Her hair was perfect, her outfit designer, her bag flawless. But something had changed. This time, nobody cared. Students moved past her like she wasn't there. Some whispered. Others watched. But none smiled at her. None followed her. None asked where she got her earrings or what she was doing after school. And beside her, no Lola, no Mimi, no power. Just footsteps behind her and a cold breeze where loyalty used to be. For the first time, the Queen had no crown. Lunchtime at Brilliant Minds High was usually loud. Voices bouncing off glass windows, silverware clinking, shoes tapping on marble floors. But today, it was quiet. Not silent, just softer. Like the school itself was still holding its breath from the day before. Cynthia sat alone at her usual table. The spot where she once held court, where her laughter used to echo across the hall, now felt too big, too cold, too empty. Her tray sat in front of her, untouched, a fork in one hand. Her eyes were fixed on nothing. She didn't eat. She didn't speak. Justin walked past with his shoulders hunched, not even glancing in her direction. The bruises on his pride were deeper than anything visible. Daniel entered the cafeteria, glanced her way for a split second, then looked away. He walked straight past her. Not a word, not a nod, not even pity. Lola and Mimi were seated far away now, laughing with a new group of girls, avoiding Cynthia like a bad memory. When Cynthia's eyes met theirs for a second, they both quickly turned away. She wasn't used to being invisible. She wasn't used to being ignored. And that emptiness burned more than anything else. Then from across the room, the one person she least expected stood up. Grace. Calm, quiet, collected as always. She walked slowly across the cafeteria, every step echoing. No drama, no attention-seeking, but everyone noticed. Students paused mid-bite, mid-whisper. Phones were placed down. Grace reached Cynthia's table and stopped in front of her. Cynthia didn't look up. Grace's voice came, low and soft, but clear enough for everyone near to hear. "I don't hate you, but this is over. Let it be over for you too. You don't just go around bullying people because you think you can, and believe that makes it right." Cynthia's eyes finally rose. She stared at Grace but said nothing, not because she didn't want to, but because she couldn't. Grace didn't wait for a response. She turned and walked back to her seat, calmly, gracefully, and the entire cafeteria stayed silent. No claps, no applause, just a stillness that said everything. Because now everyone understood. True power wasn't loud. It wasn't in fear. It wasn't in control. It was in self-control. Meanwhile, a video of the fight begins to spread. It started with a phone camera. Someone had quietly recorded the fight behind the school. Not the fists, not the falls, but the moment Grace caught Cynthia's hand and whispered something no one would forget. You don't win by making others afraid. You win by staying true to yourself. That clip didn't go viral because of the drama. It went viral because of the calm. The silence, the strength, the control. It was shared from phone to phone, then onto blogs, then into articles, not just in Makuta, but in schools across the country. Parents reposted it, teachers forwarded it. News stations blurred faces but highlighted the story. The girl who fought without fighting. Soon, pressure began to build. Brilliant Minds, high, famous for its luxury, elite names and freedom for the wealthy, was now under the spotlight. People demanded change, real change. The school board was urged to review its policies. This time, no student, no matter their name, their money, their parents' title, would be above the rules. Cynthia was quietly suspended. So were Justin, Z, and Collins. Counseling became mandatory. An anti-bullying week was introduced, speeches, workshops, open conversations. The school had finally learned silence wasn't weakness, and popularity wasn't power. Then, one quiet afternoon, after class, Grace was helping arrange books in the school library when she checked her inbox. There was a new email. Subject: Feature Request International Body Positive Campaign. Her heart skipped. A global fashion and wellness brand based in New York had seen a photo of her, taken by a classmate weeks earlier. Not from the fight, not from the cafeteria. It was a simple, candid photo of Grace walking down the hallway. Her arms strong, her posture proud, her face calm. They were launching a campaign called Built Beautiful, featuring girls and women who defy traditional beauty standards. Women with vitiligo, plus-size models, burn survivors, amputees, women the world once called too much or not enough. And they wanted Grace Williams to be one of the faces, not just for her body, but for what her body stood for. In the months that followed, Grace's life changed, but she didn't. Her face appeared on massive billboards in Lagos, Accra, Johannesburg, and Nairobi, wearing vibrant African print fabrics, standing tall with a calm smile. People stopped on the street. They pointed. They smiled. "That's her," they whispered. "That's the girl from the video." But now, she wasn't the girl who fought. She was the girl who stood her ground, the girl who made the world pause. She was invited to speak at international schools and global conferences. Not to tell the story of a fight, but to tell the story of a journey. Grace stood on a stage in South Africa, in front of hundreds of young girls, boys, parents, and teachers. She wore a sleek, deep blue African print dress that hugged her athletic frame proudly. She didn't need notes. She didn't need a mic check. She just spoke from her heart. For a long time, I thought I had to shrink myself to fit into people's boxes. They called me too muscular. Others are called too big, or too dark, or too different. But I learned a valuable truth from my grandfather. There is no too much when it comes to being yourself. Beauty is not a size. Strength is not a look. We don't need to change ourselves to be accepted. We need to accept ourselves to be free. We are all perfect in our own special way. There were tears in the crowd. Girls wiping their eyes, others nodding, some whispering, "That's me." Grace smiled. Not because she was famous, not because she had won, but because finally, someone was listening. When Grace returned to Makuta, there were no parades, no confetti, no red carpets. Just her mother waiting at the door, her grandfather beside her. She ran into their arms and held them tight. The world had seen her, but she knew who had shaped her. She wasn't a fighter. She wasn't a queen. She wasn't a celebrity. She was Grace Williams, the girl who refused to shrink and showed the world that quiet strength is the loudest kind of power.